Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into complex stories and extract the crucial insights, because understanding the world shouldn't feel like a puzzle. Today, we're journeying into one of the most chilling and frankly enduring mysteries of the 20th century, the Dyatlov Pass incident. Just picture this. A group of really experienced hikers, they're meticulously prepared for this tough expedition, deep into the freezing Russian wilderness, and yet they end up dead under circumstances so bizarre, so contradictory that, while the official explanations still don't really satisfy anyone, even over 60 years later.
No, they really don't. It's more than just a mystery. It's this kind of paradox where every piece of evidence, every chilling discovery seems to just deepen the enigma rather than solve it. So our mission today is to sift through those perplexing clues, try to understand the initial investigation, and dissect the multitude of theories that have tried and often failed to explain what truly happened on that mountain.
And this all unfolded back in February of 1959 in the Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union, which was, a time deeply marked by Cold War secrecy and paranoia. And that, as we'll see, adds a really vital layer to this already baffling story.
Definitely.
But before we get into the terrifying night itself, it's really important to understand who these people were, because this wasn't just some group of, inexperienced kids wandering off course.
Oh, far from it. These were 10 seasoned hikers and skiers, mostly students or recent graduates from the Ural Polytechnical Institute. They were certified Grade 2-esque hikers, and they were actually aiming for Grade the Third, which is the highest Soviet level. So this level of skill meant they were really familiar with survival in extreme conditions. These were not amateurs.
Exactly. Their skill, their meticulous preparation, it just immediately challenges any simple explanation for what happened to them. The group was led by Igor Dyatlov. He was 23, a brilliant radio engineering student, experienced outdoorsman. Quiet, but competent, apparently. His name, obviously, became linked to the tragedy forever.
Right. And then there's Semyon Zolotaryov, who's kind of an interesting figure. He was older, 38, a World War II veteran ski instructor. Joined the expedition last minute, which is a detail that, later fuels a lot of theories. Some descriptions mention strange tattoos, adding to the mystique.
Interesting. And crucially, there was Yuri Yudin, just 21. He's the sole survivor, but only because he had to turn back early on.
Yeah, Yudin's decision.
Yeah.
It was prompted by severe joint pain. Apparently some kind of rheumatism flared up, and it would, understandably, haunt him for the rest of his life. He carried this immense burden, didn't he? Being the last person to see his friends alive. That sense of survivor's guilt must have been just overwhelming.
Absolutely unimaginable. So, okay, the journey begins. January 23rd, 1959, and everything seems optimistic. Their diaries, photos they took, they showed them in really high spirits. Laughing, building snowmen. They traveled by train, then truck, then started trekking. Their ultimate goal was Mount Torton.
Which, chillingly, translates from the local Mansi language to don't go there.
Right. Big red flag, you'd think. And then they actually end up meeting their fate on a different mountain slope, Kholat Syakhl, which means dead mountain. It's almost like the landscape itself was, warning them.
It is the kind of detail that, looking back, just sends shivers down your spine.
Yeah.
These ominous names, they almost feel like foreshadowing, even if it's just coincidence. It adds to this almost mythological quality the incident has taken on.
So by January 28th, Yuri Yudin, he's really struggling with this joint pain. He makes the tough call to turn back, says his goodbyes, little knowing, of course, the horror that awaited the rest of them. The group of 9 continues. Their last diary entry is January 31st. They detail their plans, setting up a base camp, getting ready for the climb.
And the stage was set for February 1st, a date that would turn a challenging climb into, an enduring horror story.
Indeed. Because despite all their expertise, something happens. An inexplicable decision gets made, one that puts them directly in harm's way. Because of worsening weather, snowstorms, really low visibility, they seem to have veered off course. They ended up on the exposed slope of Kholat Syakhl, Dead Mountain. And here's where we hit the first major, what on earth moment. Igor Dyatlov, the experienced leader, chooses to camp directly on that open, exposed slope.
Which is just bizarre. It's completely contrary to standard safe procedure.
Totally.
For seasoned mountaineers, finding a sheltered spot, down the tree line, maybe a ravine, it's almost instinctual, for safety, for warmth. To deliberately pitch a tent on an exposed ridge in what sounds like blizzard conditions,
Yeah.
it implies either a huge misjudgment or, maybe more chillingly, that something stopped them from seeking a better site.
Right. It raises questions about their state of mind even before whatever happened.
Exactly.
So they pitch their tent. And then, silence. Dyatlov was supposed to send a telegram by February 12th, confirming they were okay and on track. When that telegram never arrived, concerns started to grow. And eventually, it led to a full-blown search starting around February 20th. Volunteers, the army, aircraft.
And then, February 26th, a pilot spots something from the air, the abandoned campsite on Kholat Shackle.
So the ground rescue team gets there, and what they find is, well, it's the beginning of the true horror. What was the first clue that told them straight away this wasn't just some ordinary hiking accident?
The tent. It was strangely half-torn, covered in snow, but it was a screaming paradox. All their vital gear,
Yeah.
shoes, jackets, backpacks, food, even money was all still inside. But here's the really crucial thing. The tent hadn't been opened from the entrance flap. It was sliced open from the inside. That detail, maybe more than anything else, it just signals this primal immediate terror. Something so profound that their training, their survival instincts just went out the window. It's not just panic, it's like a sudden, overwhelming need to flee an immediate threat inside the tent or right outside it.
That's terrifying. They literally cut their way out of their only shelter into, what, minus 25, minus 30 degrees Celsius cold?
Exactly. And then the searchers found footprints leading downhill, away from the tent. Some bare feet, some just in socks, maybe one person wearing a single shoe. Unequivocal proof of this panicked, hurried departure into that brutal cold. And those tracks, they just vanished after about 500 meters, swallowed by the snow.
So a frantic escape. But the question just hangs there. What on earth could have provoked that kind of extreme, irrational action from these experienced, well-equipped people?
That was the million-dollar question right from the start.
The searchers followed the general direction of those tracks, and they ended up at this giant old cedar tree, maybe a mile and a half from the tent. And there, they made the first grim discovery. Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko, found side by side near the remains of a small, kind of pathetic-looking campfire.
And they were stripped down to their underwear. No shoes, no socks. In that temperature.
Unbelievable. And there were other weird details too, right? The branches on the cedar tree were broken, like way up high, up to 5 meters.
Yeah, suggesting someone had been frantically climbing it, maybe to look for the camp.
Yeah.
Or to escape something, we don't know.
And their hands were apparently raw, scraped up as if they'd been desperately, I don't know, punching the tree or trying to gather wood without tools.
The official cause of death for those two was hypothermia, which, I mean, given the circumstances, the exposure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't explain why. Why they ran from the tent so unprepared in the first place? Why climb a tree? It suggests this desperate struggle, but against what? Or who?
So the search continues, now between that cedar tree and the tent site, and they find Igor Dyatlov, the leader. He's about 300 meters from the cedar, apparently facing back towards the tent, clutching a birch branch. He was better dressed than the first two, but still nowhere near adequately. He also died of hypothermia, seemingly trying to get back.
And then Zina Kolmogrova, found under the snow, also apparently crawling back towards the tent, hypothermia again, and Rustam Slobodin, found face down between Zina and Dyatlov. He was dressed, but he had a small crack in his skull.
Ah, okay, so that's the first actual physical injury they found, beyond the scraped hands.
Right. Though it was initially deemed non-fatal, so his official cause of death was also listed as hypothermia.
So these first 5 deaths, tragic, obviously, but you could almost maybe construct a scenario involving panic and exposure.
Conceivably, yes, although the initial trigger for the panic remains totally mysterious. But it's the discovery of the final 4 bodies that just completely shatters any simple explanation. This is what pushes the incident into the realm of the truly inexplicable.
And it certainly did. They weren't found until the May thaw, right? Over 2 months later, May 4th.
Yeah, buried under something like 4 meters of snow in a ravine near that same cedar tree.
And these were Lyudmila Dubinina, Nikolai Thibeaux-Brignol, Alexander Kolovatov, and Semyon Zolotaryov, the older guy who joined late.
And the injuries on these 4 were, well, horrific doesn't really cover it.
Tell us about them.
Okay, so Nikolai Thibeaux-Brignol had severe crushed skull fractures. Semyon Zolotaryov and Lyudmila Dubinina both suffered catastrophic chest injuries, shattered ribs. The medical examiner at the time described the force needed as being comparable to a car crash.
A car crash? Out there.
Exactly. Injuries that were, quote, impossible for a human to inflict without, say, a weapon or some massive external blunt force trauma.
And then there was Lyudmila Dubinina. On top of the terrible chest injuries, her tongue was missing.
Oh.
And her eyes, and part of her lips and facial tissue.
Yes, it's a detail that's just viscerally disturbing and has understandably fueled so much speculation over the years.
I can only imagine.
But here's what makes it even stranger, if that's possible. Despite these absolutely devastating internal traumas, the crushed skulls, the shattered ribs, the missing tongue and eyes, there were reportedly no significant external wounds on their bodies. No bruises, no cuts, no soft tissue damage consistent with a fight or an animal attack, or even falling from a significant height onto rocks.
Wait, so massive internal injuries like being hit by a car, but no signs of impact on the outside.
Precisely. This combination, immense internal force and a lack of corresponding external signs, is a huge medical anomaly. It just defies easy explanation.
So what do the official reports say for cause of death for these four?
Bizarrely, it was listed as death by a compelling natural force.
A compelling natural force? That's incredibly vague.
It's extremely vague and deeply unsatisfying, especially given these unprecedented violent injuries.
And there are other strange things too, weren't there? Something about clothing swaps and radiation.
Yes. Some of the survivors had clearly taken clothes from those who died first, which makes logical survival sense, trying to layer up. Zolotaryov was found wearing Dubinina's hat and coat, for instance. But then, when some of their clothing items were tested later, several pieces showed significantly higher than normal levels of radioactivity.
Radioactivity? Where on earth would that come from in the middle of the Urals in 1959?
That is the truly baffling question, isn't it? This specific detail immediately points away from a purely natural event like an avalanche or just getting lost. It suggests something. Well, something else entirely. Something maybe technological or military. It really challenges any simple, neat explanation.
So given all these chilling discoveries, the bizarre injuries, the radiation, the 1959 investigation wraps up incredibly quickly, like within 3 months.
Right, with that unsatisfying verdict, compelling natural force.
And then the case gets classified. The files are sent off to some secret archive, and the whole area around Koletz-Shakel is closed off to the public, hikers, investigators, everyone for 3 years.
Which, in the context of the Soviet Union during the Cold War, that rapid closure and classification just screams cover-up.
Yeah, it doesn't exactly inspire confidence in the official story.
Not at all. Regardless of what actually happened, the government's actions immediately created this environment of suspicion. It strongly suggested there was something they wanted to hide, something more than just a tragic hiking accident.
And that, of course, opened the floodgates for theories. Decades of theories trying to explain the unexplainable.
Absolutely. And the first most common one, that when the authorities eventually circled back to, is the avalanche theory.
Okay, so the idea is a slab avalanche hits the tent in the night, causes panic, they cut their way out. The crushing injuries on the last four could be from the sheer weight and force of the snow. They flee to the tree line, get scattered, eventually succumb to the cold and their injuries. Makes a kind of sense on the surface.
It does offer a seemingly simple, natural explanation, but it has some major problems. Well, first, there wasn't much physical evidence of an actual avalanche found at the time. The tent, though damaged, was apparently still partially standing. The footprints leading away were initially quite clear and seemed somewhat organized, not the chaotic mess you might expect after being hit by tons of snow. There was no obvious debris field.
And the location wasn't ideal avalanche territory, right?
Not typically. The slope was only about 15-20 degrees, generally considered not steep enough for a significant slab avalanche risk. Again, these were experienced hikers. They likely would have assessed that risk.
Plus, it doesn't explain the radiation or the missing tongue and eyes.
Exactly. Those crucial, bizarre details just don't fit neatly into the avalanche scenario.
Okay, so if nature maybe wasn't the culprit, what about something man-made? Something more sinister, especially given the Cold War context?
This leads to theory 2, a secret military weapons test. The thinking is the hikers accidentally stumbled into a restricted area.
What kind of weapon?
Various ideas. Maybe a parachute mine test. The concussion blast could explain the severe internal injuries without external wounds. A bright flash might explain why they fled or closed their eyes. Or perhaps some kind of nerve gas or chemical weapon that induced panic in flight.
That would certainly explain the government wanting to cover it up.
Absolutely. And the radiation. Perfectly explained if it was some kind of radiological test, maybe a dirty bomb component.
Is there any supporting evidence for this?
Well, there was known military activity in the wider region, and there were these anecdotal reports from other hikers and locals about 50 kilometers away, seeing strange, glowing orange spheres in the sky on the same night. or around that time.
Orange spheres. Okay, that adds another layer.
It does. And the government cover-up makes perfect sense in this scenario. But the big problem is, again, lack of direct physical evidence at the site. No shrapnel was ever documented, no craters, nothing definitively linking it to a weapons test.
Right. So still missing pieces. What about Theory 3? The Mansi people, the local indigenous group. Did they attack the hikers for trespassing?
That was considered early on. But it was pretty quickly and thoroughly debunked. The Mansi were known to be generally peaceful. The nature of the injuries, that immense crushing force, just wasn't consistent with a human attack using traditional weapons.
And no other footprints were found at the campsite, right? Just the hikers.
Correct. The lead investigator himself, Lev Ivanov, ruled this out quite early in the original investigation.
Okay, so not an avalanche, maybe not military, not the Mansi. Where do we go next? This is where it gets into the really unusual territory, isn't it?
It really does. Theory 4, the paranormal and the extraterrestrial.
Ah, the Yeti, or the Russian version, the Menk.
Yeah, the idea is some large unknown creature attacked them. That could explain the sheer panic, the flight, maybe even the crushing injuries if it was incredibly strong.
And people point to that line in the hikers' own satirical newspaper they made for the trip, right? Something like, "From now on, we know that the snowmen exist."
Exactly. Taken by some as either a dark joke that turned prophetic or maybe a coded reference to something they actually saw or encountered.
But the problem is...
No proof. No confirmed sightings, no non-human tracks found at the scene. It remains purely speculative based on folklore and that one ambiguous line.
Okay, so if not a Yeti, UFOs. Those orange spheres again?
That's another popular branch of this theory. The orange spheres weren't military tests, they were alien spacecraft. Maybe the bright lights or some other phenomenon associated with the craft caused the hikers to flee in terror. The radiation could come from the craft's propulsion. The bizarre injuries could be the result of some unknown alien technology or weapon. And the missing tongue and eyes. Maybe samples taken for study.
There's also that last photo on one of the cameras, wasn't there, showing some kind of strange light.
Yes, the so-called frame 34, although its significance is heavily debated. But you can see why this theory persists.
Yeah.
As outlandish as it sounds, it's remarkably good at ticking almost all the boxes. The panic, the lights, the radiation, the weird injuries, the missing parts.
But the fundamental weakness is...
The same as the Yeti theory, essentially. A profound lack of direct, verifiable proof of any alien presence. It explains a lot, but requires a massive leap of faith.
And there's one more, slightly more scientific but still strange theory, right? Infrasound.
Yes, the idea of infrasound generated by specific weather conditions. Certain wind patterns interacting with the mountain topography, like something called a Kármán vortex street, could theoretically create very low-frequency sound waves.
Below the range of human hearing.
Exactly. But infrasound is known to be able to cause physical effects in humans' feelings of intense anxiety, dread, panic, even nausea or disorientation. So the theory is this drove the hikers into an irrational state of terror, making them cut open the tent and flee.
That's intriguing. Does it hold up?
It's scientifically plausible that infrasound could cause panic, but it doesn't offer any explanation at all for the severe physical trauma seen on the last 4 bodies. The crushed chests, the fractured skull. That remains the big sticking point for the infrasound theory.
So, for decades, it's just these theories swirling around, fueled by the secrecy. But then things changed in the 90s.
Yes, after the fall of the Soviet Union, the original case files were finally opened up, at least partially. And the original lead investigator, Lev Ivanov, the one who signed off on the compelling natural force verdict, he actually went public.
What did he say?
He revealed that he and his superiors had been baffled, and that he was essentially ordered by high-level regional officials to close the case quickly and classify everything. He confessed his own belief, based on the evidence he saw and was perhaps told to ignore, was that the cause involved those flying spheres, some kind of unexplained technology, not a natural event.
Wow. He basically admitted to a cover-up.
Pretty much. He even mentioned details that weren't in the official public reports back in '59, like some of the bodies having a strange orange tan to their skin and patches of gray hair, which he found inexplicable.
That's significant. The lead investigator himself didn't buy the official story he was forced to write.
Exactly. His testimony adds significant weight to the cover-up claims and strongly suggests that even those on the inside found the simple explanation totally insufficient. They were actively looking at more unorthodox causes before being shut down.
Okay, so Fast forward again, 2019, the Russian government reopens the investigation, supposedly to bring clarity after all these years.
Yes, a major reinvestigation was launched by the Prosecutor General's office. They announced they were examining some 75 different theories.
75. Sounds thorough.
It sounds thorough, but there was a catch. They stated up front that their focus would be only on theories involving natural phenomena.
Huh.
They explicitly ruled out anything criminal and, by implication, anything military or otherwise covert.
So they decided on the type of answer before they even started looking properly. That seems biased.
It was certainly seen that way by many researchers and family members. This inherent bias immediately narrowed the scope. It meant critical avenues, especially those suggested by the radiation or Ivanov's testimony, were disregarded from the outset. It definitely limits the credibility of their findings for anyone who thinks the unnatural elements are key.
And what was their final conclusion in 2019?
They landed firmly back on the avalanche theory, but a specific version, a delayed slab avalanche.
Delayed? How does that work?
They argued that when the hikers cut into the slope to level a spot for their tent, they inadvertently destabilized the snowpack above them. Then hours later, perhaps triggered by wind or accumulating snow, a slab broke loose and slid down onto the tent. Not necessarily huge, but enough to cause injury and panic.
Okay. And how did they explain the rest?
The four in the ravine, the tongue, the radiation. Their explanation was that after fleeing the partially collapsed tent, the group got disoriented in the dark and blizzard. The four who ended up in the ravine perhaps fell in, and the crushing injuries were caused by the weight of snow falling on top of them in the ravine itself.
And the missing tongue?
Attributed to natural decomposition in a wet environment, the ravine apparently had a small stream at the bottom. Animals, or just decay.
And the radiation?
That, they claimed, was likely due to residual thorium contamination from the mantles used in the hikers' camping lanterns, though some radiation experts have disputed whether that explanation fully accounts for the levels found.
So the neat, natural explanation, case closed.
Well, that was the official line from the 2019 investigation. But for many people, including researchers who spent decades on this, it's still deeply unsatisfying.
Why? What questions remain?
Well, why camp in such a strange, exposed place to begin with, if not forced or panicked already? Some analyses of the initial footprints suggested they were relatively calm and orderly just after leaving the tent, not necessarily indicative of fleeing an avalanche immediate impact. And why did it seem to take them over an hour, maybe even longer, to die from hypothermia, according to some medical estimates? They had time to get quite far, build a fire, even start making a makeshift snow den near the ravine. Doesn't quite fit with the immediate chaos of an avalanche strike.
It just seems like it leaves too many of the really weird details unexplained or explained away too conveniently.
Exactly. It feels like an attempt to fit a complex, contradictory set of facts into a predetermined, natural causes-only box. It doesn't address the core strangeness for many people.
And then you have those final, lingering, haunting little pieces of the puzzle, like Semyon Zolotaryov's camera apparently having film in it that turned out blank, and that cryptic note found in one of their notebooks. From now on, we know that the snowmen exist.
Was it just a joke? Part of their camp satire? Or did they actually see or encounter something truly extraordinary out there that they were trying to document or communicate? We'll likely never know.
It's these small details, isn't it? Combined with the horrific injuries, the radiation, the potential cover-up, the government's shifting narratives, it all just solidifies the Dyatlov Pass incident as this truly enduring mystery.
It really does. It challenges our assumptions about how things should logically unfold, even in tragic circumstances.
So the dilemma just remains. There isn't one single theory that perfectly fits all the known facts. Every single explanation seems to have significant holes, leaving crucial pieces, often the strangest pieces, unexplained. Was it just a terrible, tragic confluence of natural events, a perfect storm of bad weather, bad luck, maybe a rare avalanche type?
Or was it something involving the military? A secret test gone wrong, covered up for decades. The radiation certainly points that way for many.
Or was it something else? Something truly outside our normal understanding? Those orange spheres, the strange injuries?
And that raises a really important question for all of us, I think. What does it mean when experienced investigators, forensic experts, even governments with all their resources cannot provide a clear, logical, universally accepted answer to a series of undeniable, bizarre facts like these? It's a stark reminder, perhaps, that there are still genuinely wild, unexplained corners of our world and our experience. And sometimes the truth just remains tantalizingly out of reach, buried under the snow with the only people who definitely knew what happened that night.
Exactly. So what do you think happened on Dead Mountain? It's one of those haunting stories that sticks with you, reminding us that sometimes the most profound mysteries are the ones that defy easy answers. We invite you to keep pondering what truly occurred during those final, terrifying hours.